So I was formally initiated in 1973 in Los Angeles. Prior to that, we had joined earlier. And immediately I had to join in Dallas, because where I was in San Diego, because I had so many friends and popular there, I couldn't join in my home in my city there. It was just almost impossible. Everyone was wondering, you're giving up your master's degrees to join the Hare Krishna movement? They couldn't understand anything. So anyway, I left to Dallas and joined in Dallas. And immediately on the second day, we learned how to put on a dhoti, and we went on a bus with chanting on the bus, and we were on Satsvarup Maharaj and Ganesham, who was later Bhaktivedanta Swami, and other devotees, and we'd go from town to town on in a bus and stop in the cities and chant, and then later stop at universities and chant. So, long story short, we were traveling and preaching in different universities, and Prabhupada was very pleased. So when we were in, one day, we were in North New Haven, Connecticut at Yale University, and Satsvarup, who was our GBC, he got called to be Prabhupada's secretary. So we were preaching in the New Haven area, and then we get a phone call from India one evening, and there was a phone call asking for me. So I got on the phone. It was Rameshwar Maharaj in India, who was with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said he wants our party, which was basically about 5 brahmacharis, Bhaktitirtha, myself, and some other devotees, that wants to have us distribute books, and especially standing orders of the Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita to all the universities and professors and stuff. And then, I asked, what's a standing order? He said, well, it's all the books. And I said, yeah, all the books aren't printed yet. That's right. So you haven't purchased. And I said, you mean you haven't purchased the books before they're even printed? And he said, yes. I said, seriously? And they said, yes. And I said, what's the other book? He said, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I go, where's that book? We haven't even seen it. We're going to send you a desk jacket cover of it. So, so you don't even have a book of it? No, we're going to just show the desk jacket cover, and you can get standing orders from that. So I first thought, you got to be kidding me, Anyway, none of us knew how to do anything about the library party. So we went to Yale University. I went the next day, and I spoke with the librarian. He was such a nice guy. He explained the whole library science, all about how libraries get books into the hospital, about visiting professors. And so at the end of all this, I was writing stuff down, really appreciative and thanking to him. And then he said, okay, and I'll take all the books. So I said, really? It was like I was an unbeliever first myself. And so he took all the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, all the small books, along with a whole set of Chaitanya Charitamritas, which we thought was going to be 17 volumes. We weren't really sure then, because we didn't have one volume out, but they bought them all. So I came back, to the party, and Jayadvaita Swami was visiting us while Satsvarup Prasad said, well, we sold our first standing order. Everyone was like shocked, all these books went out, and I said, yeah, here's how to do it. And we started training people to do it. Then we started going to small universities and small colleges, and then we started going bigger and bigger. Anyway, we did this now for 3 or 4 years. And we were starting to get written up in the newsletter, Sankirtan newsletter, until almost every month we were 60 standing orders here, 60 standing orders there. It was like we were getting glorified in the inner ISKCON's Sankirtan newsletter like anything. And so how does that relate? Well, Prabhupada was coming to Chicago. When he was coming to Chicago, installed Kishore Kishori, who is now installed there. This was 1975, and Radha Damodar party was there, And our library partner, our bands were there, and temples from Toronto and Detroit and all the other was there. And because Prabhupada was there, so everyone, when we came into the temple, all the devotees were like, all right, Mahabuddhi, way to go. We were like, star celebrities, and we were thinking, I don't know about Tirtha was thinking, but I was thinking, yes, I'm so wonderful. I did all these books and, I was believing all the hype that was, that was being presented to us. Anyway, so what happened is progressively, I was puffed up. And so, we got to go on morning walks with Prabhupada. And so as on this morning walk, so on the first morning walk, what you don't want to do when you go on a morning walk with Prabhupada is stand behind Prabhupada. The reason why you don't want to stand behind Prabhupada is Prabhupada stops on a dime and just stops and turns. So I didn't know that time. So I was, standing behind Prabhupada as he's walking, trying to, hear any nectar I could. And Prabhupada stopped and turned and I crashed into him. He looked at me, he goes, I'm your guru. Kind of like head down. The next thing, that evening, then he asked to come to his place, all the library party, because he was so enthused. We were like his agents. So Satsu was introducing all of us, here's Gokulananda, here's Kalakanta, here's Shesha, here's, Ganeshan, he's going through all the different ones. He got to me and he just went to the neck, it was just like disgust, And so I'm like heads down, I'm going, oh my God, I must have offended Prabhupada. And then the next there was a program. The next day there was Guru Puj, and at Guru Puj there was about 500 devotees, and I remember Uddhama Shloka was chanting in his little bhajan band, and there was a wild kirtan. And meanwhile, Ram Keli, who's now since left this world, Guru Kripa and myself were doing a wild dance. I mean, literally wild, jumping, crazy. And at that time, Prabhupada stopped the kirtan. I've never seen him stop a Guru Puj before. He stopped the Guru Puj. And, he looked and he said, Mahabuddhi, he said, what is this? This is not how Vaishnavas dance. And then he said to Brahmananda, who was just a Shaktas, that Prabhupada talked to him, Brahmananda, show them how Vaishnavas dance. Brahmananda kind of like that, and he goes, both hands up and started doing the Swami. So now the whole temple started, the kirtan started again, and everyone was doing, the Swami. And I, meanwhile, filtered back to about the 500th. And one person I couldn't even see Prabhupada during the rest of Guru Puj. I was so far back. And my head was hanging down, and I was like feeling this. So then we got that evening. There was a program with the televisions and stuff for Prabhupada. So the Chicago devotees didn't set up a book table. What you wanted, you always have to have a book table when Prabhupada's programs. So they didn't set up a book table, so I helped set up a book table. What I didn't know is Prabhupada just told all the television people that all my disciples, they all pay obeisances and everything prior to whenever they come to see me. And so the Prabhupada had already started speaking, so I came a little late because I was fixing the book table for him. And I came in, I kind of gave the namastes a little bit and sat to the side. And then Prabhupada turned to Harikesh and I asked Harikesh later, what did he say? And he wouldn't tell me. And he said, you don't want to know. And so really, I found that time I offended Prabhupada, so that was it. I figured I went back, that evening, after that program, I put my bead down. I've offended Prabhupada, my life's over. So I was committed to go commit suicide. I was gonna go now to Lake Michigan and just jump in and die. So I got about a half a block down, put my beads down and everything. I was serious. I was, my life's over now. And so I get about a half a block down, I hear this, Mahabuddhi. And the voice was Satsrup Maharaj, and he said, Prabhupada wants to see it. I go, I don't want to go. Another one, I've already offended him how many times. So then he yells again, Mahabuddhi, Prabhupada wants to see you, you have to come. So I reluctantly kind of walked back with my head down, and they drove back to where Prabhupada was staying. And Satsarut went in the door, and I decided I'm going to go sit by the shoes outside, you know. And then I hear Prabhupada's voice. So, where is he? He goes, well, he was just with me. Srila Prabhupada, and someone from inside goes, he's sitting out by the shoes. And Prabhupada goes, what's he doing there? So they called me back in, and I walked back in, my head down, and this time I paid full Dandavat, you know, obeisances to, and you know, I kind of looked up and just looked at Prabhupada and discussed as I was a beaten man, you know, and Prabhupada had this big smile on his face, you know, like really, like, yeah, I showed him. And it was like, and then he goes, I want to introduce my disciple Mahabuddhi to us. He'll tell you all the things that we were doing at colleges and universities and stuff like that. And I had my mouth just dropped open, like, and then I turned in the room, and there was, I think, the mayor of Evanston and, you know, some state representatives and all these different, I had to explain all these things, and Prabhupada just sat back smiling. And then I got it, because one of the best things you can learn as a brahmachari is you're not the doer. Prabhupada made that very clear, that whatever we do, we're just the agents that Prabhupada or Krishna, whomever is working through us, and they're the real preachers. So it's a very important lesson to learn, and I learned it early enough that I'm not doing this stuff. Because later in our library party, we saw so many miraculous, literally miraculous things where thousands of books are going out, and you know, we were being used as, you know, tools. But it's not us doing it. We were just the hands and legs, you know, the mouthpiece, you know, for Prabhupada's mysticism. So the next thing, we got to go to India a lot, because now Prabhupada was really pleased. He was writing us letters back, how wonderful, how pleased he was of this service. So now we became kind of preferred entities with the BBT. And we had our own division and where the books were being, you know, sent out. So we got to go to India on the festivals, and so we stopped here in Bombay and got to see Prabhupada when he was in Bombay before he went to Mayapur and Vrindavan, and we got to go on some walks and sit on the back of in the back lots where he was on the terraces of some of the things, and we got the chance to listen to some of his classes, some of his darshans up there. Then we went to Mayapur, and we were appointed as one of Prabhupada's guards. So 1973, I think, and 74. So we were already then Prabhupada's guards, and as Prabhupada's guard, we would make sure that, you know, only who would come in as Prabhupada went, and all these different things. But I also got in charge of Prabhupada's darshans. So for 1973, 74, 75, 76, 77, for about 5 years I ran Prabhupada's darshans in Mayapur and Vrindavan during the festivals. So as part of running the darshans, not only who comes in and who doesn't come in, so, you know, I was, you know, if you hadn't seen Prabhupada before, you were more likely to come in. If you've been every night, you're more likely I would keep you out. And only a certain number of people could fill up the room, so I would let those guests and those devotees that didn't have very much association with Prabhupada, you know, get a chance to have it during darshans. So part of the responsibilities as a guard is you have to make sure Prabhupada's not alone and you get whatever he needs. One day, Mother Pishama came in, this was in Mayapur, and she came in to talk with Srila Prabhupada as his sister. And I got up to go out the door because they were just talking in Bengali, and it's his sister. I got up to walk out the door of his room, and Prabhupada said, "Sit." And I didn't know what I did wrong. I was, you know, sitting. I don't think I did anything wrong. I was trying to figure out why I was doing something wrong. And in the meanwhile, they talked for another 5 or 6 minutes, and then he went out. His sister went out the door. He turned to me and he said, "A sannyasi never sits alone in a room with a woman, even if it's his mother or sister." There was no one else there to actually, you know, make the point to other than myself. But Prabhupada, you could see by his own strictness, even though only his own disciple is there, he followed the strict rules of sannyas. on another time in Vrindavan, and as running the darshans, there was a time when usually what would happen is there would be someone who would cook for Prabhupada first cookies or some sweets or whatever he would give out to all the different guests who were then visiting the darshan. So whoever was supposed to cook the sweets or the cookies that day didn't do it, whether they were sick or they were gone or whatever. No one had cooked, and now I have a whole full room of guests for Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was looking like, where's the sweets? And so I ran back into the deity room, not real proud of this, but I ran back in the deity room, and there was a whole maha plate of sweets to be offered to Radharsham Sundar Gornatai, and so I said, I just prayed to the Lord. I said, I'm sorry, this is for your pure devotee. I'm sorry if I'm offending you, please excuse me, but I took the tray and I took it into the darshan room where Prabhupada was there. And now the quandary was, how do I offer this? I was wondering, do I bow down and go, the three prayers? And so I was in this quandary, like, should I, how do I offer this to Prabhupada? So then what happened was Prabhupada saw like it was like a dumbbell, standing there, didn't know what to do. He just told me, lift up over the cover. So I lifted the cover up over the sweets, and he just looked at him. He said, now you could distribute. I go, oh, it's as easy as that, huh? So one day, everyone, one of the things is, every guest would have to have a sweet. If you have enough for the devotees, you give for the devotees, but if you don't have enough, you don't have to give it to them. So, but all the guests have to. So that's an order. So at the end, I would also have to step in the back of the room to make sure no one would leave without at least having some prasadam. So all of Prabhupada's darshans were nectar, but so I got to hear all of them for 5 years. Anyway, so that was a great boon and benediction for Association of Prabhupada. But one day there was this very large person, gentleman, Indian, who wore a chadar over his head in Vrindavan, sat in the back, and he was distinguishedly larger than you see most Indians. Very big, broad shoulders, wider than mine, very chin almost looked Nordic, very, handsome, but also had this chadar all over him, so you couldn't really see much. So anyway, he sat through the whole darshan. I didn't think about anything of it, and then got up and we were distributing the sweets, and Prabhupada called me up, one is left, you have to make sure you give him some prasadam. And I go, how did one left? It's only been like 4 seconds or something. So anyway, so I went out, I took the sweets and have a plate and a napkin, and went out the door and looked to my left outside of Prabhupada's rooms. There wasn't anybody, so I ran there, and then he goes, at that time, the guest house was still somewhat under construction, so all you could go is left toward the front gate. So I went left, and I started running down the side of the Vrindavan temple, and there was nobody there. Anyway, I got all the way to the gate. I ran all the way this was only like 4 seconds from, Prabhupada left, and then I'm running out. It's probably, 20, 30 seconds. I had to run out there. And so outside the gate, there was, walking toward Vrindavan, was this large gentleman, significantly taller than I was. He was seemed about 6'4" or 6'5", and very shaped very, almost like a V. And I said, excuse me. And the person stopped and turned around, and I said, Hare Krishna. I said, my Guru Maharaj specifically ordered me to give you some prasadam, didn't want you to leave without it. And he said like that, and he took out his hands, and I gave him a plate of prasad. And he said in this deep resounding voice, your Guru Maharaj is very kind. And it was like, whoa, who is this guy? Anyway, I offered my respects to him. And then I, turned and walked back toward the gate to go back into the temple room, and just wondered, who is this? And turned around, and the person was no longer there. So Prabhupada used to get visitations from Narada Muni, he'd get visitations from Lord Brahma, he would get visitations from, I don't know, other entities of significance, personalities that would come sometimes during Prabhupada's darshan, so we always had to be careful not to offend anybody. So that was a wonderful tale on that. Some of the biggest things I remember for Prabhupada's special mercy to me was when we were in Atlanta. One of the most special mercies for me was then we were in Atlanta in a walk, and when Prabhupada had turned, and he had told me this, I was actually transcendently envious. I don't know how transcendental it was, but I was envious the day before Bhaktivedanta Swami, then it was Ganesham, had got this, Prabhupada had given him his special benediction and gave him a verse from the Bhagavad Gita that he was supposed to remember and chant all the time. So I said, how fortunate Bhaktivedanta is, and I was like envious. I didn't get anything anyway. You know, it's his blessings, you know, but I was thinking, would it be really nice to get something that Prabhupada really wanted to do, but. So then we went on again the walk the next morning. So as we were on this walk, and this was like the same walk where Prabhupada pointed to the city and says, you see that place over there? And I go, and I answered, I said, you mean Atlanta? That's Atlanta City. He said, yes. He said, it will all be vacant. No, all the people will all leave it. They'll all go to the hills and into the mountains, into the forests. He said, no one will live there. He said, only the vigilantes. And I think he was meaning those, you know, those that steal everything. He said, there'll be no food, electricity, all these kinds of stuff. So they'll all leave it. And I said, yeah, it mentions that toward the end of the Bhagavatam. And he said, no, in your lifetime. So that was like, you know, welcome, call of arms, what maybe something had in the future. But also, during that walk, Prabhupada turned to me and he said, do you know this verse? And I, you know, now we're going to verses, and I didn't know a lot of verses at that time. So I said, what verse, you know? And then he chanted Bhagavad Gita 10:10, and I go, no. So, and then he chanted, Te sam satatayuktanam, bhajatam pritipurvakam, tadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamapayanti te. So then he made me chant, because he asked, do you know this? I said, no. And then he said, chant, Te sam, satata, satata, yuktanam, yuktanam. So I went through word by word with Prabhupada chanting. It was just like, you know, Bhagavatam class or something, you know. And then I was probably about, maybe only about this far from Prabhupada's face, and I was on the left-hand side. And in a gentle voice, but he said, you will chant this? But the force from Prabhupada, even it was just very gentle, and it almost knocked me over, literally. It was almost like you're getting hit with chi, you know, from Prabhupada. So, and if you've ever been around Prabhupada look at you, you look like 10 yards past you. So, you know, if you've ever been around Prabhupada like that, if he wanted to see you, he'd like look right through you. So he goes, so he made me chant. So he said, you will chant this? And I said, I folded my hands. I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. Then he said, every day? Yes, Srila Prabhupada. It's almost like fell back over again. And then he started to walk forward, and everyone was, God, Mahabuddhi got persecuted, very fortunate. I was construction. Then he turned after 3 or 4 steps, and he turned to me and he said, in this way, Krishna will always provide you the intelligence. So Prabhupada commanded me to chant that every day. And I believed him. I've chanted it, you know, for the last, whatever it is, 40 years or so. And before classes, before I speak, for anything. And somehow or other, even though I'm not very smart, not very intelligent, but whatever intelligence or things happen, it seems to flow by, you know, from Chaitya Guru, provides me something to say, and intelligence simply by the blessings of Srila Prabhupada. So I'm completely thankful for that to Prabhupada. He also did several other things that were really wonderful, at least personally to me. Twice in San Francisco and New York, when we would gather when Prabhupada was there, he was so pleased with the library party and all the books we were distributing and all the quotes we were getting from professors and all the politicians we were meeting, that he called us up in his room. Usually there was maybe 3 or 4 of us, Satsuru, Bhaktivedanta, and myself, maybe another one of the other devotees that may also be called. And we'd go up there and sit down, and he'd call us up one by one, and he'd smell this flower. and call us up one at a time, and after he'd smell us, he'd personally give the flower to us. And we'd go sit down, and he'd call the next up, smell flower, personally give the flower to us. So after all of us got a flower, then he called me back up, and he had oranges there, and he'd bite half an orange, and call me back up and give me the other half of the orange. And then he did that with each of the Satsvarup and Bhaktivedanta Swami. And so he did that. That was his way for a year of just constantly trying for Prabhupada, because we would knock on the doors, we'd had to use creative intelligence, everything to try to get books done. So we would always be chanting very seriously and praying for the intelligence of mercy and chanting Te Sam Satyutanam. And Prabhupada, at the end of each year, would call us up and give us either a flower and a piece of Mahaprasadam directly in our hands, his mercy. So these are some really tasteful activities that we had, both as a member of the library party and as a guard for, and up running Prabhupada's darshans for 5 years in Vrindavan and Mayapur. That there were so many lectures we got to do. We also were known for being heavy because we would keep GBC out. Prabhupada wasn't seeing anybody. They wanted to come in, I just wouldn't let anybody in until Prabhupada wanted to see someone. So sometimes I was considered to be heavy because it didn't matter if they were GBC, XYZ, I didn't care. Because if Prabhupada wanted to see you, you're his disciple. If he wants to see you, he'll see you. If he doesn't want to see you, you're not coming in. Sorry. Prabhupada was so merciful that he would give us sometimes his articles, and by being guard, we got a chance to know all the Prabhupada's servants very well, get Mahaprasadam daily. There was a lot of special perks that came with it, and this was a lot because I think just by rendering service, seriously, Prabhupada would appreciate. One time, Bhakti Tirtha and myself were both very active politically in college, and so one time they were starting this In God We Trust political party. Rupanuga Swami at that time was starting it, and he wanted to get both of us, and we were attracted that way, so we were thinking we were not going to do the library party, we'll go to In God We Trust. And Prabhupada strictly chastised Rupanuga. You're trying to take my men. You can't take my men. So he considered us in the library party kind of as a SWAT team, and it was his men. And we weren't allowed to go to the In God We Trust. We have to stay. And Prabhupada sent us, we went every state in the United States. We did all of Canada. We did South America. We went through Europe, and Prabhupada had us go through all the different zones. So at that time, there was different leaders in different areas. Then in 1976, before then we went we did India also. We started doing some of the India, but Prabhupada wrote a letter, let his son do Bengal, and there was a group here in Bombay that was starting. So we were doing Delhi and some of the other places, library party first. And then we got sent to Eastern Europe. So there was now this was a time behind Iron Curtain. So it wasn't either we would come in a van that was totally refigured, and we had packed books through the ceilings and sides and underneath, and packaged in and stuffed over, so it was like, it looked like a regular car, but it was like 3,000 pounds heavier. With so many books in it, language. And so we were we went to Czechoslovakia and Hungary and Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Eastern Germany, Poland, Russia. Some of our devotees in our library prayers got deported. Some people doing these things got, in Russia they got locked up in jail, and they were there for years. And then Bhakti Tirtha, he got arrested for hitting a woman in Albania, and he was in jail and had, took like a month or two for, Rameshwara to arrange to go out. Unluckily, didn't have those kinds of experience. We had to run, we would have to go to homes and have a translator and then run, because the CID, or whatever they're called, would raid, and we'd have to sneak out of hotels where the CID agent would be sitting in the lobby waiting for us. We'd sneak out the back windows and go to programs and preach and distribute all the books. The books there in Russia and in Eastern Europe, all those countries, there'd be read so much that you touch the paper and it would, after a year, it would just melt. So hundreds and hundreds of people were reading these books. Now you see why there's so many devotees, from Russia and Eastern Europe, all stuff. There are only 10 of us that went in and did this, but that sacrifice, I guess, produced, thousands of devotees, as many of the leaders went in afterwards. But this was in the early 70s. So bringing it, Prabhupada was so kind and merciful to us, though we had no real kind qualifications. We got so much association that they always say that, Vani is the most important, but I know we really miss the Vapu of Prabhupada. And I was so angry when I was in Eastern Europe. They didn't tell us Prabhupada was sick because they didn't want to bother us. So when we were in Eastern Europe and I got called out by the GBC to come to Frankfurt. So I was in Czechoslovakia then. And we drove back into Frankfurt in West Germany. And Harikesh, and I went to one of the programs, and everyone, I like chanting Nrsimha prayers. There's a whole another story, so my background's in Nrsimha stuff, I won't go into it. But anyway, I have a proclivity for getting rid of ghosts and demons and stuff. So I got sent by the GBC to come back to Frankfurt, and then that next morning I was flying from Frankfurt to Casablanca over to Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. So one day I was in Eastern Europe, the next day I was in Brazil. And there, of course, we were supposed to be doing libraries and parties, and the same thing we did in other places, with the exception of the whole Rio temple was being attacked by mukumberos and umbandas, which are spiritual, black arts and ghost worshippers. So the whole temple was being attacked, and the treasurer started speaking tongues during Bhagavatam class, and we had to chant the Narayan Kavacha on him, and so many things. So I did about a month's worth, 3 weeks worth of Nrsimha Puja to clear out everything. At the end, I sent everything back, and the perpetuators of all that stuff, they end up being burned up and died. So that happened. We found Prabhupada had left this planet. We got a call, Prabhupada had left. We were angry that no one told us before that time. But anyway, we went as quickly as we can to India, to Vrindavan. I got assigned to be the second general manager. Really, the other general Karandra only lasted about a week or not very long before he got stabbed. The person who stabbed him got ghostly haunted. The incorporator of the commissioner from Juhu area, the government, and Mr. Matre, had paid off this Shiva temple, which was just down the block, Juhu from ISKCON's temple, and he was trying to get the land. He wanted to put a hotel here, even though the temple was now up and it just opened up. He still had hopes, thinking that Prabhupada is now gone. Now he's just his chance, because the devotees, he didn't have much faith in thinking the devotees could stop anything. So the first thing he did, he started all these subtle attacks. He went to the Shiva guy and the Pandit, and they started sending these Brahma Rakshasas and everything over to the temple. So when I got here in Juhu, in Hare Krishna land, in the evenings you could hear this howling, like it's not like a dog that was sick or something like that, but it was like demoniac howling. And then you'd have all these ghostly haunted stuff that was happening around, and the brahmacharis would come in and tell me that they couldn't sleep, and things were falling, and they were talking in the ear, they'd be hearing this stuff, and they'd really be getting like, you should kill this person, and all these different kinds. So they'd be coming and tell me all this stuff. I said, what the heck did they send me to here? The guy before me just died, then all these things are going. I said, anyway, I've seen this stuff before. So I incorporated a whole Narsingha puja just like I did the week before. And we did that for a longer time. And, you know, there was, after, make a long story short anyway, we did this puja and yagya, and I chanted all the mantras to, you know, render asunder these many incantations practiced by others, and burn them, cleave them, chop them, cut them, send them back to whoever it is doing this stuff. I did it in Sanskrit, but anyway, that's kind of the English gist of it. So shortly after about a week of that stuff, and then the last one I did this real seriously, did some stuff, a little fire yoga and everything. Anyway, the temple about, you know, block or two down the way, part of it caught on fire and one of the pundits died mysteriously. Anyway, I was told later, many years later, that I had to make a promise not only do these things, you know, for defense of devotees, because I'd killed a number of people in this lifetime just throwing the stuff back at them. So I said, okay, that's not a problem. Anyway, so that part of the problem got cleared, and then meanwhile, an important function here is that there was a constant fight in Jew. Prabhupada fought like anything to bring the temple up, and there were so many battles, one after the other. That one of the battles that this Maitreya caused, where he had hired all these fishermen and, you know, Christians and stuff that came with brick bats and iron rods and rocks to come charge the temple. And their idea was to pull down Radharasbihari, break Radharasbihari, and, you know, discourage and vilify the temple. And this way, Maitreya was hoping everyone would get discouraged and leave, or whatever his idea was, who knows. Anyway, so long story short, they came into the temple, there was a big fight, I call it the Mahabharata Bombay, and many people were laying on the ground, injured. One person, one of our chowkidars, one of the back tenants who was a stuntman, was beating up on one of the chowkidars, fisting, hitting him on the ground, and one of the other chowkidars came with his lati and hit him over the head, and the guy fell backward, you know, bounced his head twice on the ground. He eventually died a few hours later. So, you know, this was all set up by this Maitreya. So there were 4 devotees, you know, and 4 chowkidars and 200 people. And I remember there was a Ruchi Sevana, like the one-punch knockout. He was, as people were coming in, he was hitting them, they were flying off, you know. And then Garanga actually saved me from one person who came with an iron rod to hit me over the head. He put a chair over this guy's head. His head went through the slot where the chair is. He was obviously on the ground at that. And there were so many people on the ground. Krishna had sent a devotee from Los Angeles named Maharaj Das. I think he was expert in karate, so he was like hitting people out. And the chowkidars were doing so. That at the end of about seeming like 15 minutes of this battle, maybe it was shorter because it seemed like a long time if you're in it. Anyway, there was like 50 people laying all over the ground, injured, and women screaming. This guy was dying on the floor, and one of the devotees, trade dust, managed to shut the door of the temple room for Radharasbihari from the side so that no one can get in, and bricks were being thrown against the temple, and screamings were out there, but the Petit Pavana had shut the side gate. So the other people, after seeing all the people laid on the ground, they took off. And meanwhile, you know, we let the injured go out. None of the devotees nor the chowkidars even had a bruise on them. So the next day, police came, and long story short, they had taken us. They had taken Sridhar Swami, Petit Pavana, Mogalila, Jagat Purush, Ruchi Sevan, and myself, along with the 4 chowkidars, into Santa Cruz prison, Santa Cruz jail. There we did a bunch of spiritual things, artiques, some of the stories you'll hear by other people. Anyway, it was we kind of turned that into a Kirtan Sagar is what it was called. You know, because there was a little label that was on the wall, it said Kirtan Sagar, so we named the whole Kirtan Sagar. So we turned it into preaching, and the devotees were able to bring prasad and stuff. So the other devotees will tell that story. Meanwhile, they all got bail. And I didn't get bail because I was listed as the number 1 suspect at that time. And so they took number 2, which was one of the chokidars, and he didn't do anything either because he was on the ground getting beaten up. And Ruchi Saban agreed to stay with me even though he had bail. He said, going to prison by yourself is probably not the best idea. So we got put in these buses and to be shipped off to Bombay Central Prison. And as soon as we got there, they picked in this big hall. And as we put in this big hall, somebody barked out some instructions, and some people got down. I had no clue what they were talking about. I didn't understand Hindi or Marathi, whatever he was talking about. So I was standing up. And Ruchi, I think, was smart enough to go down, but I was standing up, so it looked like I was being, defiantly disobedient to whatever the command was. Anyway, this lifer, they kind of like the monitors in there. This lifer comes at me with a rati, coming at, running hard, like as hard as he can, to like whack us. And in the meantime, this little, we called him Hanuman, this little guy about, not even 5 feet tall probably, but built like, he jumps out of line and just starts whapping on this guy who was charging at me, just teeing off on him. And you hear this, Jai Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Ram, and then, and I'm going, welcome to Bombay Central Prison, what's going on here, And so then he turns, he says, I am Ram Bhakt, I will protect you. And then all the other guards came out and started whapping on him, and anyway, they dragged him off into solitary. And I'm going, oh God, So the next day, that evening and morning, we got put into this huge jail rooms, like a big auditorium. And there were several of these all over the compound. So we were in prison. It's the higher your crime, the more prestigious you are, just obverse than the regular outside world. So the higher your crime, the more prestigious you are. So we were in murderer's row, murderer's prison. Then there was other white crimes, different compounds for lower crimes and stuff. So we were in the big boys club, right? And we were prestigious. So we got issued our New York Yankees pinstripe, jerseys, and so somehow or other we smuggled in a picture of Radha Rasa Bihari, and we created an altar, which you're not supposed to do. We didn't know. Who knows what the rules are? I don't know what the rules are. And we were put into the, it's a big. We were closer to the middle, but a little bit to the left. And I didn't know anything. Who's on the right, who's on the left, or whatever. Just Indians, basically, prisoners, like we were. So I went to go use the bathroom, and I started going to the left bathroom. On the left, there's one on the left, one on the right, and all these guys start stopping right there. They were stopping me, and then I saw a guy from out the corner goes, So then they let me pass the restroom, and I'm going, what's going on? And then still wasn't smart enough to figure it out yet, And so it was time to do an artik. So I go, everyone's going, how are you gonna do an artik? It's just me and you and this chokidar that, everyone else are prisoners. Well, we're gonna chant Hare Krishna. So we put up a, makeshift altar. I had, one of the devotees turn over their metal plates, and they started playing like tablas a little bit. Nice. And so we started, Kiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chana. We started evening artik, and we started chanting. And surprisingly, we had several people, not a lot, but several people first engaged. So then someone came and told me, on your left are all the Muslims, because they were really irritated. So the Muslims on the left, Hindus on the right. Oh, okay. And I was sort of like in the middle, but closer to the Muslim side. So I started to walk over to the Muslim side, and then in the next morning, again, they were all standing up, stopped. They were like, no one ever does this. And so the Mahant guy over the side, he goes, so I walked over to him, and I offered my respects to this Muslim, and I said, we're doing our program at 7 o'clock, but I think it's really apropos. You guys should be doing your, Allah Akbars, I don't know what I told them, your prayers and worship like 6 before us, before we do ours. And he thought about it for a second. He goes, you are very wise. Because I figured on my side, if I don't let them do first, they're gonna they're gonna make a whole list. But they didn't do any religious prayers in there. So all of a sudden, that evening at 6 o'clock, Allah Akbar, you hear all the prayer rug, and everyone's going down to these. Even the Hindus were like surprised because they never saw any of that. And then at 7 o'clock, I needed a pujari because we were chanting, translating in one place, and so I needed someone to be a pujari. So the guy right next to us, there was an open space that no one was taking next to the guy next to us. Didn't know why, but we were next to him, and he was a nice guy to me. So I said, and he worshipped 33 million demigods. So he had little pictures of, everybody and anyone you could possibly think that you ever heard as a demigod, and then he had little photos and stuff. So he was attached to being a pujari, and so we said, yeah, you can be our pujari, but you have to follow these principles. He agreed to it. We found out the reason why no one was bothering him there, because he was up for 21 murders. He was the most decorated mass murderer that was in the jail at that time. I made friends with him. He was going to be our pujari, and because everyone was frightened of him, he would go and he said, "We're going to have a program, so I will get them. They will all come." I didn't. I goes, "Okay, well, how are you going to do that?" He says, "I will just ask them." So so they went over him, and then he said, "You are coming to program, right?" And everyone would go, "Yeah." So we'd have, all of a sudden now the whole side of the whole Hindu came over because they were deadly frightened of this guy, because everyone knew his reputation except us. And we showed him respect and gave him a position, important pujari, and he would, be doing his incense for 20 minutes while we're chanting. So we're chanting, and the boys turned over the plates, and then we're chanting Hare Krishna. And so this started going on day after day. And so after about a week, and all the devotees, after a while, they just start coming on their own, and we started. Bimal Adhikari started translating in Hindi and Marathi, so that I'd give in English to the class, I would get in, they would translate in Marathi. And then, so after about 2 days of that, Ruchi and I, we were going on a hunger fast. Now because we weren't going to eat the junk that they were going to give us, and it wasn't vegetarian. So I said, we can't eat this stuff. And told the warden, we can't eat this stuff. He said, well, you're going to need a doctor's note. Well, where's the doctor? So they marched us out of the, murderer's row, and to take us to the doctor's office, which is a little compound in the center of the prison. And we're walking. The guy that came to take us was the same guy that came to beat me up and got hit by that other guy. So we weren't really encouraged by that, because this guy looked at us like, I'm going to get you guys kind of thing. So anyway, he's the guy walking us. We get close to the doctor's office, and I have right out from the side of my eye, you could see this thing moving, and this little Hanuman guy somehow or other got out of solitaire, and he's running full blast, and this guy's up in front of me, his back in front of me. Anyway, I kind of just had enough time to kind of turn like this. He picked up a rock that was on the, in the flower bed kind of right there, and just whap! On the back of this, lifer guard, whatever they call him's head, and he just gushing with blood and just bounces to the ground, in front of the doctor's office. And this Hanuman guy, he runs all the way back to where the cell somehow was open for him, and he goes back into the cell and shuts the door. Now we're standing here in front of the doctor's office, guy's head's bleeding, guard laying on the ground, and we're going, and we're just says, this doesn't look so good. So no, it doesn't. We can't even go back to the prison because we can't get in. We'd be standing out there asking, hey, can we get back in? So we're standing there, we had to wait for the doctor. So the doctor comes, he steps over this guy and goes, I hear you're on a fast, but you need a vegetarian thing, permission. I said, yeah. And I said, aren't you going to help this guy? He's bleeding down. He goes, he's a lifer. Whether he lives or dies, what does it matter? Who cares? I'm going, this is the doctor, I'm going, and I go, and Ruchi looks at me going, this is, Anyway, we get our little note, and we were able to communicate that back to ISKCON Bombay. So they started to bring in a bucket or so just for Ruchi and I of prasadam. Then, you'd have to bribe the guards first. So the guards would bring their tiffin and get whatever they're full of tiffin. So then we get it. Then the other Hindus saw that we were taking, our prasadam was Khichdi and the stuff the devotees were making were a lot better than what they were serving in there. So then we got a lot of people, can we have some? So we got notes back out to ISKCON, Juhu, and they started bringing in, 4 or 5 buckets, and we get more, and then the guards wanted more. And then the Muslims were starting to eat them. So all of a sudden, there was about 15 buckets of prasadam coming over from ISKCON Juhu. And then there started getting to be, in the other compounds, they were interested in prasadam. So some prasadam started being distributed to the other compounds. So what happened in the rest of the day, as we would have our program, so 6 o'clock, you'd hear the Allah Akbars, 7 o'clock to 8, we'd have our program. And then at 8 o'clock, from one of the other compounds behind us or somewhere, you hear this, Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha Deva. So they'd hear the Ganesh Proof. So after about a few days of that, at around, just before 10 o'clock, you'd hear the Om Namo Shivaya, you'd hear the Shiva group. So at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock up till 10, you'd have all this, would be like the Bhajan hour at Bombay Central Prison. So then the warden came by our compound. He said, I don't know what you were doing. So the guards actually saw our little Radharasa Bihari Mandir, and they came over to break it up because you're not supposed to have anything in a prison. So the warden stopped him. And he says, no, that is okay. And he says, by the way, I am Gujarati, And I go, that's very nice. He says, I don't ever have a Gujarati edition of Bhagavad Gita. I like your Guru Maharaj very much, So we got word out to Bombay, to the devotees, and they smuggled in me, I don't know what they had to bribe the guards with, cigarettes, or probably not Falana, but more Mahaprasad or books or something. Anyway, I was able to get a Gujarati Bhagavad Gita. And so now it was like, he said, the second time he comes back in, he said, I've been following your case. You should be out soon. They don't really have any information on you. But I would hate to see you leave, because now we have bhajan kutirs all over this whole place here. Before it was all violence. Now you got everyone chanting their religion. And I said, well, I'm thankful for our opportunity, because now all of a sudden they're bringing in hundreds of Gita Gans, and we've got all this distribution of, back to Godheads and Gita Gans and Marathi and stuff all throughout the different levels of prison, not only in the Murderers Row, but all these other white collar places as well. So the tons of books are going out, big things about prasadams going in there. And so we're having this program, but we get out once for an hour a day. We got out to walk around the compound of our prison compound. We were enclosed in a big wall, and inside the wall was the big building, and then you're allowed to walk around the compound like once a day for like an hour. So as we walked around, we actually saw there was a Tulsi tree, only in India, in our prison there was a Tulsi tree. So, we didn't have lighters and stuff like that. So all of a sudden, we started doing, we said, let's add, Tulsi worship to our daily program. So, all of a sudden we started, the Tulsi prayers, Vrindaye, Tulsi Devai, Priya Kesavasya, and then we started the Artik, but we didn't have any Artik prayer for them. But just like we did in Santa Cruz, we do the Artik to Tulsi, and all the prisoners are walking around. So all the Hindus all stopped now when Ruchi and I were doing, Tulsi Puj, at least with our hands and stuff, and chanting the mantras, and all of a sudden they got all crowded, And all the Hindus were there, offering respects to Tulsi, and all of a sudden it went from like 5, 10, 15, 20. We've got like about 35 prisoners all watching as Tulsi goes. Then, then Penny with Ruchi, I was doing the Arctic. This thing was Ruchi this time. He was taking the ghee lamp around to all, which didn't exist, but he was taking on all the prisoners, or taking from all the ghee lamps, all like 40 prisoners, And so I was thinking, I got back up. I have no idea what we're doing in prison because we didn't do anything, but we're here. And while we're here, it's like a huge preaching program inside a prison. Now, it wasn't all that convenient for us. I wouldn't want to necessarily say volunteer to do it again, but we did it out of necessity. And and so what happened is, very shortly, we got out, and Ruchi already had bail, but he voluntarily stayed in, and I finally got bail because I went from number 1 to number 2, and our lawyer was able to get me bail, and we went out. But meanwhile, because there were so many things going on there, Bhima Ladakar, the Bengali guy who was falsely accused as well, he eventually got convicted of killing that person, even though he had nothing to do with it. So he was in jail for another probably 15 years. But I heard that the prison program went on with him for a number of years. I'm not sure exactly which one. I heard he may have been initiated as a Gopal disciple. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to Gopal about it. So when I finally got out, then we started to stay in Bombay because we couldn't leave the city. So during that whole time, there was big marches on the temple they came by with about 300 people with this big marches, and calling down for justice, and they had like kind of carrying the dead body around. And so that big, and declaring that devotees should die or whatever it was. Meanwhile, the Sadaji Whitlaw Ball and all the Hindus in the community, assisted by the RSS, the Vishnu Hindu Parasad, and I think we're having in the auditorium, there were big speaking in newspapers, all the full-page newspapers all over the thing for a whole month. Batting back, there aren't Christians. So it was this whole big propaganda, free, that was not free. I mean, the many of our life member stuff were paying for all this stuff, but big marches and big arguments and big, discussions, and all the RSS and the VHP, which were very, almost like the militant section of the Hindus community. Never got behind it, all the newspapers and stuff. But the time I got out, and there was a big celebration, and we were getting maybe at Radharas Bihari's Monday, maybe like 300 people were coming before, like on a Sunday feast or something. It was, that was what it was, the locals. Now all of a sudden, that first weekend, we got 7,000. Coming on Sunday. Then, the next week we got 10,000. So it was multiplying. It was like all of a sudden, okay, now we got to manage the place for, life. And then all of a sudden the devotees would go out life membership, and it was like, like a shark frenzy. People were like signing up left and right. So, as I said earlier, the sacrifice, the little sacrifice that we had to participate in, Prabhupada's plan was, even though for us it wasn't the most tasteful, but as a servant, you have to do whatever you have to do. So even though we went through all these experiences, the result of that experience was we became the most popular temple in Bombay, even more so than what Mahalakshmi and the City of the Naya temples stuff at that time. Our Janmashtami that we had it was like a 3-ring circus. We had 100,000 people come the first time ever. We didn't know how to manage all that stuff. So they had Gopal Hingurani from the VHP and Sadhguru Ball. They got all these different people assist us in the management of the place. There's just tons of prasadam, visitors, all the movie stars and stuff would all come and give. Himolini did free performances of, so all these things were going on. So all of a sudden we went from this little temple, a few things down, struggling, battle, to like, 2 months later we were like, having to deal with more people than we could handle. So part of the issue in Bombay was, you always have to struggle, because Prabhupada wanted it. He put his blood into wanting this thing. So every manager that's going to ever put, this is sort of like if you've managed in ISKCON Bombay, you've actually probably get a war star pin, from the manager, that, because everyone that's going to go through, it may not be the same thing like I went through, but everyone's going to have struggles. They're going to have a lot of fighting, battle, and it's just part of the institution here, because this is such a valuable piece of property, and so much struggles went into this. It seems like anyone who's going to be a manager here, it successfully goes through this, will get their little, badge of honor, little star and stuff like that, and you can go out into the world of ISKCON and manage any other place with a lot less, issues. But because of this, and so much appreciation for Prabhupada, his commitment, his stars, the devotees that fall after, and now visiting Bombay after like 20 plus years, there was still bits of struggles, but now you're seeing that people comes by the thousands and thousands, Rath Yatras and Janmastamis, and just even in the festivals here, it's packed. There's 5 ring circuits going on. So even though there was so much sacrifice going on, now the preaching is just expanded so much, and with really nice management that we see afterwards. So, we're so appreciative that we were able to at least be logged into the annals of Radharas Bihari's mandirs, servants who gave a little bit of their time and energy. And when all the battles and fights were over, then I was moved out of Bombay into the next battle scene. So coming back, seeing all of our godbrothers and being able to, I really appreciate the services that everyone did, and the people that are here doing it and who committed and stayed. We're very, very appreciative just to even be allowed to participate in it. And, being a Prabhupada disciple means that, to take the banner of Prabhupada told me to preach boldly. So preaching boldly means sometimes you're not going to please everyone with what you're going to say, but at the same time, the commitment of doing what Prabhupada wanted really moves us forward, and is the critical path in which we, mold our life, that we hope that we can please him and not become an asat disciple. Hare Krishna.